What's going on, creators? Yeah, I just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I'd like to continue the conversation on mental diets and where you're putting your attention. A lot of times, coming out of like the truth community, it's easy to get stuck in this addictive pattern of just drama and fear, the fear porn of like the they, especially with everything that's happening. I mean, there's plenty of stuff to be fearful about if you choose to perceive reality in that way. That doesn't have to be the only way. I mean, that's not how I'm perceiving it. Part of how I'm perceiving it is just realizing that it's just lies and not real. Because as I disconnect from staring into screens and believing the national narrative or the world narrative, any of this stuff, and just kind of just focus on what's going on in my physical location, my town. Yeah, there's been some resistances at first, but things seem to be pretty much back to normal. It's very small percentage of the population, but I live in a very red state and even redder county, and so a lot of these like draconian, authoritarian type of things that you're seeing through a screen, I'm not experiencing in my day to day. And I'm not really experiencing any like the pressures or the coercion, I guess, as I feel like I've already experienced that, and I just have continued to move in this new direction and continuing to see how that narrative has no effect on, the life that God's gave me to live, and hopefully share that with others, especially ones that are dealing with a lot of drama, maybe at their employer, at their job. I know I hear a lot of that going on at the moment through the grapevine, through people I know, in my general area, but mostly, through like the internet, people I've grown close to over the years is just like, oh, well, my employer's getting ready to either I take this experimental injection or, I continue working. It seems like a pretty obvious choice what to do, when you kind of weigh the options. But for some that's not so easy, because there's a scarcity fear of like, oh, what am I going to do, how am I going to be provided for. Now, part of these errors from my perspective as like a business owner, from somebody who doesn't get a paycheck, from somebody who like kind of gets sailed, I mean, just kind of experiences like the abundance of God, basically sharing that with others in these kind of times, hopefully to help you realize that losing your job could be the best thing that's ever happened to you, and not to sit there and be in fear about it. If you're in a job that's that unconscious where they're making these policy decisions, why do you want to work for them? What are you getting out of that? Are you getting some sort of satisfaction, or is it just the safety and security that it brings? For some, is it this high level of pay? Is that, if I don't get this jab, then how am I going to find a job that pays six figures again? And it's like, well, at what point does it stop? I mean, it's like, when you lose your body autonomy, I mean, you're no different than a slave, especially when you see how money, fiat currency, is just created out of nothing. You could have $1 million in the bank, but, if inflation rises and rises and rises, it doesn't mean anything. And it's like, getting into more of a mental state of actual abundance and prosperity. Wealth, I guess, is another label, like where they say wealth is a mindset. Well, so is like poverty and scarcity. And so once you start seeing the metaphysical nature of reality and how your inner conversations start to be externalized in your life, in your jobs, in your relationships, and your all of these things, just everything's mirroring back aspects of your inner self. And when you know that, and you realize that God is your provider, not my boss, not the man, not this company, things begin to shift. And it's not surprising, if you face a little bit of that resistance up front of like, jumping into something new. I know I experienced that when I jumped into like my music career. It's like I had a job, my last like real like kind of job, was selling receipt paper. It was like The Office. It was crazy, but I ended up getting fired from that job. No, I knew I was going to, because the writing was on the wall, with these trying to hit these unrealistic sales goals, and I knew that it was just not. It was during the recession and like everything else, and it was just like, and plus I was not happy doing that. But yeah, I seen the writing on the wall, and ended up getting fired, getting unemployment, and using that as a cushion to pursue like a music career. And that was like 10 and a half years ago. And like, yeah, and it was the best thing that could happen, And so, I kind of understand, what it feels like to be in that position where you're so used to like, an employer being your provider, where maybe a self-employment or like entrepreneur is it's different, because as you look at God being your provider, you start seeing how the customers start to it's really like synchronistic, how things start to come together as you start moving in that direction. And it's so easy to make money. It's part of like the illusion of scarcity, like money's hard to make. No, it's if but the problem is, if you have resistance towards it, you can push it away. And part of like that resistance is starting to change the story you're telling yourself about it. So if your story was like, oh, I'm working for this soulless company, and you feel guilty for like kind of participating in it, and but then you need it to be able to put food on the table, take care of your family and shit. Start changing that story to, for one, God provides for you, God takes pleasure in prospering you, and that the path will be laid out for you. I mean, there's not a hopeless situation. If you can move your body, you can make money, and from somebody who has like a handyman business, when I had, 3 guys at one point working for me, 2 of them were not very skilled, but even not having very many skills, you can still, find things to do. I mean, like, I'd have those guys like clean out garages filled with shit, throw them in dumpsters, and if you can really get into a lot of things without very much money invested up front, doing service-based work, whatever you're good at. It's like you see all these like nurses and like healthcare providers losing their jobs. I don't know if that's happening here. It doesn't seem like it is. But where it is happening, there's a demand for home health, and there's all sorts of opportunities. It's like elderly. A lot of families don't want to put their elderly loved ones in nursing homes. But they just can't care for these people in a way that makes sense. I mean, it's like some elderly people need a lot of care, and it's a great opportunity for people that have those kinds of skills to just get on board, just like helping people not go to a nursing home, just, keep them in their house where they probably want to be anyway, but there's so many opportunities, especially once you realize that the help that will come in figuring it out is within you, and to start going with those coincidences and synchronicities when they start to pop up. So it's like, standing in faith has to do with action then too, because part of like the old story that you're telling yourself that's being mirrored into your life, when it comes to your work, your job, a lot of it has to do with the amount of money you make. All of these things has to do with the story you're telling yourself about yourself, about the situation, about what you're doing. But as soon as you start to change that story, there might be initial resistance that's been holding you in that box. But, the statistic that rings out all the time to me is like, say, 70-80% of people don't like what they do for a living anyway. That should be a big red flag that, God's put a different mission in your life, for you to do. Live the life that God created you to live, not man, not somebody who put you in a box, and not your prison cell. But even with that, a lot of that's self-created. And one of the biggest things that holds people in these patterns is not taking responsibility for where they're at in life, blaming the they. Oh, it's the white man that's kept me down, or it's the government, it's the they, it's the Jews, it's the name it. Any of these things that people make it. Oh, it's the unvaccinated. Oh, they're doing it. They're keeping me a slave. Start taking ownership for that kind of shit, and if it's meant to be. It's meant to be, that you'll have these different positions. But if it's not, then stop prolonging the inevitable. If you have that little inkling inside your heart that's just like, every day is a fucking drag, and it just, I don't know why I'm doing this. There's got to be more. There's lots more. I mean, it's like you can be, do, or have anything. If you really believed that, would you be doing what you're doing? I would say most people would not be doing what they're doing. And this is a great opportunity to start moving in a different direction. So first step, start changing the narrative. Stop feeling like a victim, like, I'm a victim. I'm about to lose my job, my career. It's all been for nothing if I get mandated to do this, and I'm really against it. Then let them fire you. It's not the end of the world. It might feel that way. It might feel very, very scary and different. But part of it is evolving your identity. And a lot of times with our jobs and what we do for a living, we make that part of our identity. We make it part of our self. But that's not who you actually even are to begin with. And so continue to do what feels right to you. Go within. Don't listen to some external expert. There's an expert out here telling me what to do. I should just blindly obey them. But go within yourself and really start to ask. What would you ideally want to be doing? What would your teenage self want you to be doing? Would they want you to be selling an insurance, sitting in a cubicle? Is that what you wanted to do when you were young? Or is that something that just kind of happened? Is like, do you want to be selling receipt paper? Or is that something that just happened? It's just, I can look at my own life and, realize that those choices were kind of, it felt like the breaking point for me was like, I couldn't bear the thought of being like on my deathbed, being old, or however, I didn't really think I was going to live that long. I thought I'm older than I thought I would ever live. I thought I'd be dead before 30, because I was drinking and partying and doing all sorts of drugs and living a really kind of crazy life. But like, but it's like, the thought was, could I live with myself without ever having gone for it, chasing that dream, could I, it's one thing to chase it and fail, and at least I could say I went for it, but it's another to never even try. And I couldn't stand that thought. And on top of that, I felt like, working in a lot of these places felt very prison-like, I guess. Like I felt like like a slave on some level. Not being able, can you come in on Saturday? Oh, can you do this? Oh, can you do that? It's like, oh yeah, I just been working 15 days, 16 days in a row. I can just come in for another 2 weeks every single day. That's fine. Who cares what I got to do? It wasn't something I was into. Plus my family. My dad was an entrepreneur. My mom, she's self-employed. So seeing, well, they did it. Why can't I do it? And so that was kind of what pushed me. And that might be more difficult for people that weren't brought up in an environment where it's like you can start a business or you can just start making money. There's so much help on YouTube even to show you the steps. It's like I feel like I could go anywhere in the country. I wouldn't want to go in a lot of these places that are like really filled with a lot of this hysteria. But in the past, I guess, or in the near future, where a lot of these things have kind of settled down, I feel like I could go anywhere with like a couple $100 in my pocket and be able to thrive again. Because it's not, I got to, work, like using a bunch of physical force, and I'm gonna make the phone ring and all this kind of shit. Which is what we get kind of brought up to believe. This is what I was brought up to believe, and I have done that, and there's some success to that, but it's very difficult, short term, constant just stress and anxiety, and what if I don't get this sale, then I'm fucked, kind of mindset. When now just looking at, God's my provider. Everything that's happening is a bridge of incidents. It's all going to work out. Everything's working out perfectly. All these customers are being drawn. All I got to do is answer the phone when it rings and do the job, treat the people right. And how I'd want to be treated, and then the value that I put in, the love, the attention, the amount of flow and presence that I bring to the job will be cycled back in a form of payment. And when you get out of the mindset of like money as being, it's like your faith in it is what gives it the value. It has no intrinsic value. It's created out of nothing. I did this same thing the other day where it's just like, it kind of feels like a scam. It's like, oh well, the Federal Reserve prints this shit up out of nothing and then loans it with interest that can never be paid off. So it's a gigantic Ponzi scheme, which that's true. I mean, that's what it is. But for the average citizen, artist, for an example, that also allows you to create money out of nothing then too. And so one of the interesting things is, as like an artist, as like a musician, you can, or a producer, you can in your mind create a some art, or as a business owner, using skills to create something. And so basically you can, artists, blah blah blah, business is all different words for a creator, someone who's creating something of value. So like this, blank piece of paper, I can do one of these. Thanks much, love. I can sign my name with a little note. I could auction that off, and if I had somebody interested, they could buy it for $5, $20, $100 out of nothing, just because of the value created by that. For somebody else, it has no intrinsic value. It could just be, crinkle it up, throw it away. It has no intrinsic value except for another person that might, for some reason, well, he touched that, he put love into that, and so I want it. It's that simple. And like the same thing is true when it comes to generating something of value, which can be traded for cash, it could be traded for vehicles, it could be traded for food, it could be traded for, fill in the blank. It's really up to you. And one of the things I've realized, is like, somebody who does like estimates and bids, most of that is just like, I don't know, $500, $1,000. And I just did a quote the other day, $5,500. It's just, you're just making this shit up, and so, to share that with others, I think is important, because there's so much conditioning and programming when it comes to money and abundance, prosperity, because so much of the old nature was built on the concept of scarcity. And that's something that a lot of us, got brought up with. This, not everybody, but the ones that, had that brought up and as part of our identity, like, oh, money's scarce, you got to work hard. You got to work hard every single day. I had a lot of that, because my grandparents, my grandpa especially, he worked, he was a sharecropper when he was young, which is like kind of like a white slave in the South at the time. He was picking cotton in the South. Then didn't really even know how old he was, because he was born at home, picked cotton in the South. And then when he got old enough, in teenage years, he went into the army, into Korea, and then that was that progression. But every day it was just work, and so I got brought up with a mentality where it's just like working all the time is like that's how that's like noble. I mean, that's like a high quality characteristic, and so like every parent like tries to embed, I guess, maybe some sort of programming onto their kids, like I know I did with like my stepkids, and what I tried to bring to them was being able to get up without somebody forcing you to get up and get where you're going on time, without somebody like forcing you, because I've seen so many people with that as a flaw, where they just chronically run late and lose their jobs and just inconvenience others. And I find it to be disrespectful, especially when I'm super busy, to have to wait around on people. It's like, I got shit to do. I don't care that you have nothing to do and you don't see any value in what's going on in your day, but I got shit that I need to address. Now it's cascading, throughout the rest of the day. And so yeah, and so I try to impart some of that, but and even now, trying to impart some things to who's ever listening, hopefully, hopefully help move you in a direction, because a lot of like people that listen, to me, have come from like the truth community, where it just feels like, oh, there's no way you can thrive in the beast system, and that's not real. That's a story you're telling yourself, and it's like you don't need as much money as you think to start doing things. It's like if you live in a big enough city, even getting like licensing and permits and stuff, like to do like handyman, I looked at it just out of curiosity, what New York City, like New York State, you need no license to do handyman work or general contracting like that, from what Google was saying, but like in New York you need a license, which is kind of typical in like bigger cities, just you need some sort of a license to do jobs, but most of it's just filling out a form, it's just paying a little bit of money, filling out a form, and stamp, here you go. It's like, oh, how do I open up a bank account with like a business name? And it's like, oh, it's simple. You just go to the courthouse, you fill out a form, you get it notarized, and boom, you can cash checks with a business name on it. It's like most of this shit is not hard. It's just filling out forms, paying a little bit if you have to, and then there you go, you're good to go. It doesn't need some rocket science degree. It doesn't need very little of any degrees or proof of education or qualifications for a lot of this shit. In my state, you don't need anything to do electrical work, which surprising, but like maybe in a city, they might have an extra, like you need to do this, but so much of this shit, I mean, it's like washing windows. I mean, I think when I started doing that, I had a bucket. I think you can buy a bucket for like $2 or $3. Water, dish soap, and a squeegee. You might be under $40 to be in business. You just walk around town and just ask businesses if they need their windows washed. I think I got 1, 2, 3, 4, businesses I wash every month. And a couple $100 a month, and if I really was in a big city, I could probably, have a big, week or two of that, or maybe even do a whole business on that. I don't know, it just kind of depends on how much competition but there's not that much competition. Most people don't go for things, most of that's an illusion too. Once you get to a certain, I don't know, level, you realize like there's only a small amount of people that actually go for it. It's like most people get into a rhythm and they're just in it. That's just what they're doing. They might talk about doing stuff, but the ones that actually put skin in the game, maybe that's going to change with the amount of people that are maybe looking for a different job. But where I live, I don't know if it's transferable everywhere, probably not, but I mean, there's a labor shortage where I live. So like the idea that you're going to fire your best people that have showed up every single fucking day through this entire pandemic, good fucking luck recovering from that. Who are you going to find? Some retard that just sat at home, just freaked out over nonsense. You do it to yourself, and so I don't feel bad for these businesses that will destroy themselves by just being stupid and, following some woke agenda. It's like those unconscious woke customers are the worst customer base to pander to. It's like most of them don't have any money. Most of them will just bitch and complain and, talk shit, and you can't do nothing right. And it's like, fuck those customers. You don't, that idea, oh, I need to get every single person to go to my business. So, like, if half the people are just brain dead, it's like, send those to your competitors. Let your competitors have those people. You don't need every single person, and part of, like, that mentality is, like, from the old nature of, like, oh, I want to be like Walmart or something. I want to sit at the top of the pyramid and just sit, it's like a goat or something, It's like, I just want to sit on the top of the hill and just enjoy the view from the top. Even though, you got people just, crawling, trying to drag you down. It's like, is that really what you want? Is like, or do you I don't know. I don't know what's going on with a lot of people. But, the thing of it is like, I know for a fact that most of these people that, Yeah, and it might sound cold though too, because it's like for not having that compassion, for people that are just like, oh, I'm going to lose my job if I don't do this. And it's like, are you really super happy with the direction that company or employer is taking you? I mean, does it feel like you're working for a heavenly geared organization or something that's involved in the beast system on some level? Because I feel like a lot of these businesses that are requiring that are probably participating unconsciously more so in the beast system than anything else. And it doesn't shock me that there's a cult-like ritual to continue to work there, because things are becoming more obvious. It's not as hidden, 'cause me personally, I've already experienced this strange behavior and this kind of groupthink years ago. I mean, this is not new, and that's why I'm not really bothered by it, because I'm already used to it. It's like I'm used to the fact that a lot of the population is borderline possessed, just being puppeted around, just in a delusion, mainly because of their own pride, because they can't admit that they've been wrong, that they've been lied to as much as they have been, even though it's been glaringly obvious for the past 20 years that I've been aware of, probably a lot longer, probably for thousands of years, probably, but like, you can start going down that rabbit hole and then start triggering people that, are really into history. But yeah, I'm more into just what I personally have experienced in my own life. Since 9/11, it has been, since I've been kind of aware that there's been this shit going on, and throughout that whole thing, seeing through, experiencing many veils, having a lot of these things that have been inner beliefs and assumptions start to play out in a certain way. But then if that would happen again with kind of where I'm at, I'd probably interpret it differently. Like, I'm kind of interpreting kind of what's going on now. It's like an awakening. It seems like, to me, it seems pretty obvious that, the people that are choosing to kind of go to the path of like Satan, believing lies, being basically just not paying attention to what God said to do, are self-destructing. A lot of the manifestations of that, just eat each other and self-destruct, and it's just kind of the nature. Because creation is not random. What's going on is by design. This is not just some random coincidences going on. Everything's deliberate. Everything is spiritual, and what's happening now is no different. The only difference now is like choosing whether you're going to participate in the beast system, or are you going to participate in heaven on earth. Those are the choices. Fear or love, and it's always in the choice you make now. I mean, it's not a choice you make tomorrow, and that's been part of this whole progression too. Is like, if you didn't resist the mask, are you going to resist this shot? If you don't resist a shot, are you going to resist the booster? Are you going to resist the mark of the beast? Are you going, it's like, you have to say no. And then trust that God's got a plan for your life and move in that direction. As someone who's been moving in that direction, I'm so grateful that that's been the progression, because through dropping these fears, dropping the fear, growing faith in the reality that God is real, for one, two, that God's promises are true, God rewards that faith as you go in that direction. As you do it, God will manifest in miraculous ways. A lot of times worrying about that, well, how exactly God's going to do that, keeps you stuck in the present moment, and like fear and anxiety, and kind of looking at the present moment as awful, as unbearable, not knowing. But as somebody who has kind of went for it and seen it, the pattern plays the same way every single time. The only thing that changes is the speed in which the manifestation happens, because the less that you believe that the resistance is real, and the more that you just believe in the connectedness, for one, between you and God, and that God's real and God's promises are true, and that God's a rewarder of those that seek Him, you start to see it faster and faster, to the point it's almost instantaneous. Where sometimes you can have thoughts about something and then immediately see a corresponding reaction into physical reality. Maybe think about something, next thing you know, some stranger just walks by you and answers the question that you had in your mind that you asked, gets answered by some happenstance, somebody talking on their phone or something. Yeah, it's wild, but it happens all the time to the point where it's just like, man, this is awesome. That everything's happening deliberately on purpose. That's okay. There's nothing to fear. Fear is an illusion. Ultimately, fear God. And it's like, oh well, what? How you fear and you love at the same time. It's like, well, what you fear, you worship. So it's like if you're fearing the virus, you're on like a metaphysical level making an idol out of it. It's like it's the same thing with like everything. It's like what you fear, you kind of like worship. So if you fear God and you're not afraid of what oh, if I lose my job, then I'm fucked, type thing. It has this weird because basically the fear in itself is an illusion, and so you correct the fear by going to God and asking, what is this about? Why am I afraid? Why am I afraid of God? Why? Because you already are afraid of God. This kind of boils down. It's like part of the fear is because of an error in thinking, that can be corrected through the Holy Spirit and by asking and choosing to listen to that guide instead of your old mind. And so, kind of unpack that in your own self, but like, yeah, I'm trying to think of maybe a different way to say that, but yeah, just go within and unpack that for yourself and try it out. See it for yourself. It will be made clear to you. You'll get the understanding. But other than that, I think I'm about. So thanks for listening, everybody. Appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing. Appreciate your spiritual support and your financial support. Thank you for that. And other than that, I think I'm about. So have a good rest of your now, and God bless.